Today's tale begins with weaponry. So today I'd like to talk a little bit about the weapons that the brothers tend to use. So you have a couple of categories. Things like one-handed axes, one-handed swords. You got the old maces here. We've got spears. All sorts of weapons, really. So I'll talk a bit about the differences. So the first one that you're probably going to find your lads having is the sword. So the sword is a good weapon for if you are fighting a fair few lightly armored individuals. So at the start of the game, sword's pretty good. You get the old slash here, which adds 10% hit to chance. You can inflict 40 to 45 damage, of which 0 to 9 will ignore armor, and it inflicts slightly less damage to armor. We also get the right post skill, which basically for an opponent attempts to hit you in melee and miss, you make it hit back with a negative 10% chance. It's pretty fatigue intensive. And the shields, well, the shields are themselves. Next up, we got my favourite, the old mace. Here I've got our Morningstar. Good old bashing weapon this one is. So if we come down here, we can see we do a bit more on the armor here. So if we go back to, where was the sword? This is about the same level sword. So here we're doing about 24 to 31 armor damage. But if we mash someone here with the old mace, we do a fair bit more damage to the armor, which can be good for slowly wearing down those heavily armored guys. Whereas the swordsmen, well, they'll struggle, they'll do a bit less damage. So here on a bash, we inflict an extra 10 fatigue damage, which is good. If you get a couple of bashes in, you can start to slow down the incoming hits, or if people want to use certain skills against your brothers. The other one that we get here is knockout. So go for the stun instead. And the stun can be good if you think your brother here needs a little bit of time to sort of deal with the situation. You can go for a stun instead. We have the spears. So my brother here, he's got a boar spear, but you can also start out with the standard spear when you're at a lower level. So the spear comes with some good skills, the old thrust. So the good thing about spears at the beginning of the game is you get a fairly good plus hit chance on thrust. So here you can see we have a plus 20% chance to hit. So for brothers, when they're starting out and they're pretty inept, you know, they don't want to be swinging around a lot, missing. So you can give a few of them a spear so that they at least hit and they at least do some damage. You can see here it builds up fatigue fairly slowly compared to something like a mace. It's pretty comparable to a sword, actually. The sword, yeah, it does less damage than the sword, but you do gain that skill to actually hit. And then spear wall. So what you can do is, if you think your line's about to get hit, you can put your spear brother out and activate spear wall, so that any targets that basically run in to his control zone will they'll get a melee hit from your brother. And if you take the skill, you'll just keep hitting everything that comes in. Otherwise, the first target to come in will receive the hit and nothing else. Tostig here is actually carrying a winged mace, which is the higher version to this mace. So if we look at his bash, he actually does quite a fair bit to armor. So it's comparable. His mace would be comparable to the arming sword. So if we look at arming sword, it does about 32 to 36 to damage, 40 to 45 to something that he hits. Whereas if we look at Tostig here, it is 35 to 55, so the upper range is a bit better. But really the thing that counts is crushing down that armor. And then of course, we have the axes, the hand axe here, which can be used. One of my favorite things is to split people's shields. So if you find that you're fighting a lot of units that are bringing up their shields, so things like humans or the young orcs that have shields, they'll sometimes shield wall you, and you can use split shield to do a bit of extra damage to their shields. But the other thing is so here we have chop. So you can see it uses up a fair bit of fatigue, does a moderate amount of damage to both armor or person if you hit them. The real thing is if you hit them on the head, well, they're going down. They are getting that 50% extra damage. Lovely. And then if we have a look at some of the bigger two-handed weapons, we have a long axe, which is a two-handed axe. So what you can do is you can put these brothers behind the lines and swing over the top of the front line. So if you look at my setup here, this is my front line. This is my back line. My back line has multiple weapons, and they got the archers, but they also have the two square weapons. So with the long axe, you get a strike, which will deal a considerable amount of armor damage, and anyone without armor, well, they get hit by this baby. They're going down. They are going down indeed. I have a few weapons that I've picked up from some goblins as well. So this one here, the old Jagged Pike, it's a polearm. Doesn't do a lot to the armor. In fact, it's pretty poor. So if we stick that in his hand here, does for a swing, you only get one out of it. So 45 to 65 damage to armor, 50 to 70 to a chest. But what it really does is it has a bit of an extra chance to hit. So I give that to my archers because a bit loose on the hitting skills. But if it does hit, you can do extra bleeding damage over time. 10 bleeding damage is pretty good, as long as you don't have any armor in the way. And the other one is a repel, which is a poke, so you can move things away. It also disables things, so like if someone's got a shield wall up or a spear wall, you can give them a repel. It'll disable that, and the rest of the brothers can move on in to assist. We've got a pike here, which is another polearm. Bit of an extra chance to hit the head. I love those head hits. It also does. So here we go. We've got we've got chance to hit. It's plus 10%, so you can at least reach over the front line. And the old archers here, they have a chance to actually hit something. And then the old favorite, the billhook. This is good for really bringing down that armor there. 90 to 135 damage to the armor. Can really get in there and give someone a going over with this thing. And if they've got no armor and this thing hits them, they tend to take a fairly good beating. Fairly good beating. As you can see, most of my archers, they're given the ones that give them at least a little bit of a percentage hit chance. While I do have one guy armed with a nice life-ending long axe. So the other thing that comes into play here is how much do you have of what? So at the start, you're looking for things like the spears, because you can sort of hit targets, with that plus 20% chance. You can actually hit with these lads. Swords are pretty good. You generally have a short sword or falchions at the beginning. They're pretty good. You get a little bit of a bonus to hit, 10%. It's still pretty reasonable. And against non-armored targets, which you should be facing at the start, you get a few hits in there. You do a bit of damage. But later on, towards the end of the game, you're looking for things that do a bit more solid work against armor, since a lot of people will be lugging around that plate armor. So you'll be looking towards the maces. And I don't actually have any hammers in my crew yet, but when I pick up one, I'll be having a few hammerers with some hammer time. And you get, lastly I'll talk about the ranged weapons here. So when you first start out, you get the old light crossbow. It's nice and effective. Does what it does. You know, you can shoot 6 tiles, do a little bit of damage here, so you can do not much to armor. Pretty good hits to anyone without armor though. You get a decent to hit chance, but if we have a look over here, we get the I've got a bow which I've actually picked up from a goblin. Has 7 tiles of range, but you get aimed shot. So this one gives your lad a little bit more extra, your brother a little bit more extra to hit, but you can only really get one of these off because it costs you 8 AP, compared to the quick shot, which has no chance to hit, and you can fire off 2 of these if you like. Get ranged weapons as well, so things like I picked up a bundle of spiked bowlers from some goblins. Got the old bundle of javelins. These are all, you can equip them on your brothers, but I've actually taken them off because at the moment most of my brothers are having a little bit of a struggle with the old fatigue here. So I've just removed a few items so that they can deal with running around and actually being able to hit things. You also get the throwing net, which you can throw on top of people to root them in place and reduce their defenses. It's good if you want to surround someone and maybe beat them down. You can throw a throwing net on them, slow them down from getting away. But I tend not to use these at the moment, just as I said before, so the lads have the ability to really get out and about with that fatigue. Lastly, I'll talk, it's not quite in the weapons section, but I'll also talk about armor. The shields here. So there's a couple that you get. At the beginning of the game, you get the wooden shield, which just gives you 15 to melee defense, 15 to range defense, and a -10 fatigue. It also comes with an armor value of 24. So each hit you do receive from things like axes and so on does a bit of damage to the old shield there, potentially destroying it if it takes too many hits. But the main thing is you get the bonus to defense. So we will take his shield off. He only has 3 defense, but if we throw it on, 18 defense. What that means is each time someone tries to hit you, it basically takes their melee skill of so he has 49% chance to hit before anything else, and then you minus off the melee defense, so he'd be down to 31, so he'd have a lot lower chance to hit when he's facing someone with a shield. So the kite shield is specifically for ranged, whereas I should hopefully have a heather. There we go, got a heater shield, which basically gives you an extra bonus to melee defense. So over here you can see gets a bit more of a bonus, which is good for the old frontline troops, so they don't go down like a sack of biscuits. Also you get things like, so I've got feral shields which I've picked up and so on, but you can pick up different shields from some of the orcs and the goblins. They're not as, I don't find them as useful because they tend to add extra penalties on here. I mean, you get an extra 5% there, but you're really sort of suffering because it's in between your wooden shield and your actual kite or heater. And the thing is, it gets a lot less durability as well, with only 16 in there. It tends to fall apart. And that is that for my weapon section. Tune in next time for more tales from the Raven Company. Hey guys, thanks again for watching. If you like what you've seen, hit that subscribe button or leave me a comment on anything you want to see in the future.